Thank you. Well, thank you, Raleigh, for being here, for still staying in the room and listening to this strange guy that is on stage. My name, Andreas Grabner, but please call me Andy, right? That's what you just learned. I am from Austria, not Australia. It's cows, not kangaroos. It is Mozart, not Kylie Minogue. Okay? Got this straight? It is Prost and not cheers. So later on when you have a beer or whatever beverage, Prost kind of means to your health, kind of, right? I also have, it looks like a bazaar here. I have a lot of these Keptn shirts in sizes from small to extra large, and they need new owners. So I hope if you like these t-shirts, that you want to grab one. Keptn is a CNCF project, so Cloud Native Computing Foundation. I guess I don't need to explain what that is all about. I am one of the maintainers, contributors, and also a DevRel for it. During my day job, I work at Dynatrace. But today it's all about Keptn. So the first question is, what are you going to learn today? There's three things. I kind of have my talk in 3 acts. Act 1, what is Keptn, key use cases, and who is adopting Keptn? Because you may have never heard about Keptn, and if you never hear about something, maybe nobody has never used it. I'll prove you wrong. Act 2, why we built Keptn, because why do we get yet another orchestration tool if you already have 10,000 orchestration tools out there? What problems do we really solve? And the third one is how Keptn actually works. What's the architecture, and why do I think it is definitely worth taking a look? And I really hope to encourage a couple of you to at least look at it, maybe download it, install it, or contribute, because we are an open source project. We are currently, if you're familiar with CNCF, who is familiar with CNCF? I did the hands up, all right? Perfect. CNCF, every project starts as sandbox. We are a sandbox project right now. We have our sponsor to get into incubation mode. Our hope was to get it done by KubeCon Europe, which is in 3-4 weeks. And then from there on, we just go all the way to graduation. So, act number 1, what is Keptn? Keptn is, as you can read it from the top, an open event and data-driven automation tool for DevOps and SREs. This sounds like a marketing person invented this. What Keptn really is, it's an orchestration tool where we want to help you as DevOps engineers or site reliability engineers to get your code fast into production and keep it there in a safe way. Therefore, we have 2 major use cases. And I know this is probably pretty hard and small to see from the back. I think we share the slides later on as well, if I'm not mistaken. But what it really is, it's an event-driven task orchestrator on the one side for multi-stage delivery, so you can define your tasks that you want to execute. You define a process, just a process, no tooling, like deploy, test, validate, release, and over multiple stages. The other thing you can do, because we're not just yet another delivery tool or a tool that can orchestrate delivery tasks, we can also do and help you orchestrate day 1 and day 2 operational tasks, like getting a canary out successfully, or doing auto remediation in case you're getting a Prometheus alert or something happens. Then Keptn can do things like assessing the situation based on the problem information you have in your monitoring tool, in your logs, and then figuring out what to do, rolling back, scaling up, validating if this thing actually solved the problem in a loop, and then execute another action. Hopefully everything works, or in the end escalate. Now again, the question is, this is not unique, right? You've probably built scripts that do something similar. What I think is unique is what we do in the middle. What is baked in and at the core of our orchestration engine is an SLO evaluation feature, or it's actually the core component. What we are doing, Keptn makes data-driven decisions based on SLOs, service level objectives. SLOs have been mentioned a couple of times today in previous talks. So at the core, we have very tight integrations to your observability platform of choice. When we started with Keptn, we built integrations with Prometheus and Dynatrace. Datadog integration was just built, and it's all open. It's all based on open event standards. You can integrate any of your observability platforms into Keptn. And if your logo is not on there, then don't be offended. Just build an integration for it. Now the question is, what about all the tooling? What about the rest of the tooling? The rest of the tooling is what you also connect to Keptn. I'm sure you have your most famous and most popular and most beloved tool for delivery, for testing, for notifications. these tools still stay there. We don't want to replace them. We want to orchestrate it. And the things we do, the way we do it, and this I think is also unique, we don't have anything that's like custom coded plugins. We don't want you to write scripts where you have to plug in yet another tool. We are doing all of this through open event standards. We are part of CNCF, but we are also part of CDF, the Continuous Delivery Foundation. In that foundation, there's a special interest group for CD events. We're currently there with companies like Google, actually the Keptn project, with Argo, with Flux. Jenkins community is also part of it. So we are defining the event standard based on cloud events, which is also a CNCF project. So we're defining how these tools should communicate with each other. Why are we want to do this? Because if you have ever built scripts and you integrated a tool in your script, you have to figure out what's the API, call that API, get the result, do something with it. The next time this tool was upgraded, you had to potentially update your scripts because the API has changed. We want to standardize all of this because we live in 2022, and I think we should no longer have tool-to-tool integrations that are all hard to maintain because every tool has their own proprietary API. Even though the tool is doing a test and this tool is doing a test, why do we necessarily need completely different APIs? And we're driving this through the open source community. Now, a core and key component, I want to see if this works. Yes. A core and a key component is the SLO evaluation. And I want to quickly spend a minute on it to explain what this really is. So you will see later in my live demo, we have a so-called evaluation step. You can put this anywhere in your process definition. We call it sequence definitions. And what the evaluation does, once it's kicked in, it actually interacts with what we call the Lighthouse service. The Lighthouse service is a core component that comes with Keptn. The Lighthouse service retrieves your SLO definition from the Git repository that you connect to your Keptn automation project. And in that SLO file, completely independent of where the data comes from, you can specify, and I need to probably zoom in here a little bit. Here we go. SLO YAML, objective, error rate with a criteria, JVM memory, number of database calls with some criteria and some total scoring. So we have separated the concerns between what you expect from where you actually get the data, because where the data comes from is from the SLI providers. And in this case, for the SLI providers, if you have Prometheus, you have a team that actually knows how to specify PromQLs to define how you actually query these indicators of a Dynatrace. It would be the Dynatrace language. So the point here is that as part of the evaluation, which is a core component of Keptn, Keptn reaches out to your observability tool. It gives it the query, says, please give me the values back. The values come back, and then the Lighthouse service is evaluating the values, independent of where the values come from, against the objectives. And then it basically scores your environment based on one or multiple metrics. And we come up with a score between 0 and 100. You are in quality, this is awesome, but you can pull in any type of metric. It's not constrained to just observability. Any type of tool that can produce data, you bake it in. So let's see it in action. Let's see. I hope the demo gods are with me, not like with you. It was really tough for you. I'm really brave the way you managed it. So let's see and explore it in action. Maybe just quickly walk over that you see a little bit of Keptn. Keptn itself runs on Kubernetes. I have it running here on a K3s on one of my Linux instances in the cloud. Keptn is organized in projects, and I just want to show you two things. There's a delivery demo that I have here. I talked about sequences of tasks, and you can see here is a sequence that is just finished, I think. I have staging, where I do a delivery. I've specified a delivery sequence where I do a task called Monaco, monitoring as code, that actually configures my observability platform as the first thing it does. You know, it could configure your alerts, it could configure metrics, it could configure dashboards. In my case, it configures some stuff in Dynatrace. Then deployment, I'm using Helm to deploy, and then the evaluation actually kicks in. And if this is good, I have it configured in a way that I'm driving a multi-stage delivery sequence here. Once the staging sequence is finished, it goes over to production. Actually starts with an approval, then again configuring monitoring for my production environment, deploying, and then running the evaluation. And as you can see here, we always have full access to the evaluation results. So this is really truly a core behind the scenes. Now, where does this data come from? Behind the scenes, every project has a Git repository. I have an upstream Git here to my Git. I'm
me just zoom in here a little bit. This is actually where you specify what we call the shipyard file. This is the sequences of tasks, right? Remember, deliver, edit, Monaco, deployment, evaluation. That's all here. You can have multiple sequences that do different things even, so you specify your process. And then Keptn is using events to then interact with the different tools. And then depending on the stage, you then have the specific files for your services or applications that you want to automate. So for instance, here I have my locust scripts. I have my Helm charts for this particular service that I'm pushing. But here also very important, I have my SLOs. This is my SLO definition behind the scenes, right? And I would maintain this here. Everything is in code, everything is configured. And then this all drives Keptn. So this is at the core. I want to show you one more cool thing, because a lot of people are actually starting out using Keptn just for evaluation. That means you may already have a delivery pipeline that already does some testing. And then the first thing you want to do is you want to say, hey, Keptn, now you reach out to my observability platform whenever I need you. So please run your sequence, analyze all of these metrics here, right? These are a lot of metrics that come in. Keptn also not only pulls in the metrics, it compares it against your previous evaluations. You can do absolute and relative validations. Really cool stuff what it can do. All right, this is it for the demo. There's obviously more you can explore. Feel free to hook me up later if you want to. Now let's go quickly back to the slides.
So who is adopting Keptn? Keptn is adopted in the primarily, the first use case is really that our users say, we already have a pipeline, we already do some testing, but we are lacking the automated analysis. So like Mike here, he was building a Dynatrace dashboard, and then this dashboard is automatically analyzed. So we have special integrations, as I mentioned, with Datadog and with Dynatrace, and you can build New Relic integrations and whatever you want. For Dynatrace, for instance, users can also just define a dashboard, and then we analyze the dashboard. So we look at every metric, we look at the threshold definitions, and instead of, let's say, Mike, you're looking at it and say this is good and not good, we just do it automatically. There's also links to YouTube videos, because all of these users, we have Keptn user group meetings every other week, and then they've shown it. So I know it's hard to copy, but you will see it in the slides. Next use case, this is kind of dear and close to my heart. The Austrian software company, Raiffeisen Software, they're building all of the, or pretty much everything from the Austrian online banking software, so mobile banking and all that stuff. They have integrated this into Jenkins. Every time that Jenkins builds a new build of the online banking, and Jenkins is then also executing JMeter tests, then they're using Keptn to validate if this software is good or not good, and to go into production. Then we have the guys from Volusion. They do kind of what I've showed earlier. They have actually JFrog in the front. Then that triggers a Keptn multi-stage delivery pipeline using Helm and Argo, rollouts, JMeter, Dynatrace, and so on. Last use case here is Savitha from P&G. She was doing auto remediation, so she gets an alert from the monitoring tool. Then in Keptn, you can, and I need to zoom in here again, remediation triggered. Different actions can be executed. In her case, you can specify what type of action should be executed in terms of, depending on the problem that comes in. And we have different ways to then actually execute actions. We could execute an Ansible tower script. In her case, we were executing Python scripts. But you can see here, Keptn is not just kind of focusing on the classical CI/CD, but it's a general purpose orchestration engine that can connect to any tools, and it uses SLOs in the middle to validate. Like here, right? Where's my magic wand? The evaluation is always in there. And if the evaluation fails in the remediation, then it executes the next action, the next, until we run out of actions in your workbook, and then it escalates, for instance. Right? And this was a great testimonial. Tarash from Facebook, when he saw it the first time, he said, Keptn feels like a reference implementation of Google's SRE handbook. And that made us really proud. So why did we build Keptn? Because what you saw, what I showed you, is probably something that you may have also built internally. Because honestly, Jenkins is a great tool. You can do everything in Jenkins. I can build test execution, add test result analysis. I can send notifications to Slack. I can integrate it with APM. I can put an approval process in there, add chaos engineering, add security scans, add more stages, do whatever you want. Right? You can do all this with your tools. But if you do it with the tools that have been around for a long, long time and you need to add more stuff on it, then you end up like Christian, one of our early adopters, where he was trying and he was asked to put all of this logic into GitLab. And GitLab is a great tool, but he was kind of not overwhelmed. He managed all of this, but then he ended up with a lot of pipelines that were hugely long and complex, and it was hard to maintain. Also internally at Dynatrace Data, he was responsible to kind of scale our pipelines, and we were using Jenkins. We were standardizing on our microservices on new Jenkins pipelines, so we had some templates. Then from the first pipeline, we then did some copy pasting because every project had their own little testing tool and their own kind of requirement. So in the end, we had many permutations of Jenkins pipelines, right? What we did a code complexity and code duplication analysis. And we found high level of code duplication in all of our automation scripts. Well, I see nodding heads because this is just what happens. And this is why we said this approach does not necessarily always work. And this is why we said we need a new approach to automation, especially as you need to add in more tasks, what I mentioned earlier, auto remediation, chaos engineering, we heard that earlier, and so on. So how does Keptn now work? Why is Keptn different? Even though I showed it in a demo, but the way Keptn works and kind of what drove us is because we saw all of these pipelines. If you look at a classical automation script, you have in a very long pipeline or a bash script, I think you like bash, you said, whatever it is, you end up with individual tasks that are hard-coded with a particular tool. And then sometimes the configuration for that tool, your CRD, your YAML, or whatever, is sometimes even embedded in your pipeline script, which makes it very hard to maintain. And so what we said, we need to break this monolith. We need to break the monolithic automation scripts. We need to separate process from tooling. So we have the process on the left, we have the tooling on the right. And what do? We also put the configuration in a Git repository. You saw my Git repository earlier. Every configuration ends up in Git in a specific tool folder belonging to a certain stage and a service. And then we're using eventing, just as in modern software engineering, right? You're decoupling your monolith, and then you use events to connect them, and then you need an orchestrator. The orchestrator is Keptn. Events are in our case standardized. We're using cloud events, and we are standardizing this with all the tool vendors. So, to give an example, performance sequence in staging. I told you a number one use case is quality, actually. Right? So here I have my stage, and I want to have a performance sequence where I say deploy, test, evaluate. When you now say Keptn, we have a CLI and also API, you can say Keptn trigger the performance sequence in the staging, and here's a certain image. Then, in my case, when deploy is executed, or when Keptn executes the task, it sends a deploy event that has all the metadata, and then I can have, let's say, a certain deployment tool registered, subscribe to that event, and maybe a notification tool, because I also want to send the same information to Slack. Once this is done, Keptn goes on and executes the next task by sending yet another event, the test task. And then the magic thing that I've explained earlier is the SLO evaluation. We call the definition of the process a shipyard. In the shipyard file, you specify the sequence. The tools we call the uniform, because every captain has a uniform, otherwise he's naked, and that depends on the captain probably, but I guess nobody wants to see that, so he needs some tools. We have a Git repository where all the config lives, and then we have cloud events, where they're all standardized. So this is the first example. How am I doing on timing, by the way? I'm good. I still have 50 slides. Example number 2, automated canary rollout sequence in production. So here I have a production stage canary rollout is my sequence name. I have prepare, deploy, evaluate, and release. And I guess you get the idea. Here the cool thing is you see my animation. I can now have different tools subscribe, because maybe in production I use different tools for deployment, or I use different notification channels. I may have additional tools that I want to interact with. And because it's all loosely coupled, they just subscribe to the events that they're interested in. So I say Keptn trigger canary rollout in production. Here's my image, and it's the same as before. Event is sent. The tools that are subscribed to the event will then do their job, and then everything goes on. And if everything is fine with the evaluation, in this case the release task will be executed. That is switching from, let's say, 10% canary to 50% canary, and you can then have this in the loop until you're at 100%. Okay. Last use case that I want to show you in more detail is the remediation use case for production issues. Again, in production you may have additionally some infrastructure automation tool, maybe some other deployment tools, some modification tools, some ticketing tool. So, Keptn trigger remediation in production, problem high failure rate, root cause, log disk latency. This can come in from your alerting tool. Right? You got a log, and then you get a metric, you get an alert, and you then trigger the workflow in Keptn. In Keptn, we have this additional interaction where you can specify a so-called remediation file, where you can say, for this error, this is my sequence. For this type of error, so you can just define the sequences. So for log disk latency, and I'm just highlighting this again, for log disk latency, which was the root cause that was put in, the action, the first one that is defined is the clean disk. Clean disk might then be subscribed by your infrastructure automation tool, whatever that is. And also notification is sent so that you're aware of what's happening. Then, in the remediation use case, Keptn is always automatically, implicitly executing an evaluation. It's pulling in the metrics from your tool, and then based on that, decide what to do next. If it's good, it stops. If not, it goes to the next action that is defined. But you get the idea, right? Action, evaluate, and if it's not good, then at the end, the last step is probably an escalate where you may create a ServiceNow ticket or send a message to PagerDuty. So, Keptn brings opinionated cloud-native automation to all of your projects. Right? What does this mean? I think we just learned and looked a little bit what's happened in the cloud-native world. Everybody's going to microservices, everything is asynchronous, everything is event-driven, and we just wanted to bring the same thing to you in the automation world. So you can either take the red pill and stay where you are and be happy and think you have job security because it's a lot of work, or you try the green pill. I'm not sure if it's in the matrix, I think it's blue and whatever, but you get the idea. What we have seen is just a huge reduction in automation code, separation of concerns everywhere, and the most important thing is you reconnect to your tool. All of these tool vendors, they're doing a great job. They're all doing certain things extremely well. But in order to connect them all together, I don't want you to write and maintain your own automation scripts. Because friends don't let friends build their own automation anymore. So, to make it a little bit more management friendly, left and right, you can take a picture from this now, because now it's clear. You can either say 90% of the pipeline code includes technical debt, or you can go with the Keptn side, and so on and so forth. Most importantly, right, you can leverage your existing tools. On the top left, most of our sequences are obviously triggered from your existing tools. If you have GitLab that builds a container, pushes it to a registry or JFrog, then you would trigger the sequence. Everything is automatically orchestrated and SLIs and SLOs in the center. So, to sum it up, whoever you are, DevOps SRE, pick your use case that you want to get started with. Maybe the quality gates, maybe full delivery, maybe auto remediation, whatever it is. Bring your configuration. That means for every tool you bring the configs, obviously, that you have for that tool. Connect your tools by letting them subscribe to the events, and then Keptn does the rest for you. That's our vision. Keptn is an open source project. We've been around for 3 years. It was actually donated to the CNCF by Dynatrace, and this is why I just want to say a thank you to my employer. I've been there for 14 years. And this is the only slide that I want to say about them. They're really great because we have 10 engineers actually working exclusively on Keptn from Dynatrace, and we have a lot of external contributors now. For instance, I mentioned earlier, Datadog is one of our competitors, but they have contributed an extension. So we are complete. We want to just build we want to build a better orchestration platform. Yeah, and with this, I hope I stayed in time. I hope you still remember Austria, North Australia, Mozart, not Kylie Minogue. Prost is very important. Or cheers. Cheers is also okay. But yeah, if anybody wants to have any shirts, then I have plenty of them here. Most importantly, I would really like for you to at least check it out and see if this project is something for you. And give us feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do we have time for questions or not?
We need to move. Yeah.